I'll start off by putting the valve cover back on.
Oops, that's backwards.
After the cover is in place, we'll stick the little rubber gaskets in. Then we'll put the nuts on. Next we'll put the throttle cable bracket back in place and put the two 10mm bolts in. Next, as you can see, we'll put the spark plug wires back in place.
Make sure you put them back in the right order. Now put the lower cover back on. Don't forget to put the little washer back on to hold the pulley in position. Of the 4 bolts, there's one that's longer than the other ones. It goes on the back side of the engine. Okay. Now make sure the belt is completely on the power steering pump. That. Then there's on the back side of the crank pulley, there's another pulley, and that's the one that the power steering pump goes into. And then line up the line up the key with the keyway on the pulley, and then just push it on like that. Put the crank bolt back in. Make sure it's nice and tight. The alternator belt goes on from the top. Just drop it down around the pulleys. Next thing, I'll jack the engine up a little bit to give me more room to work from the top. So the next step is to put the front cover back on. So the bolts that go through, they kind of hold this harness in position, so make sure you put that back in before you put the bolts in. On the top cover there's 3 long bolts and 1 short bolt. The short bolt goes in the middle on the front. Back bolt's really tight to get to, so just gotta take your time with it. This time I'm going to try and put the power steering hose back on before I put the mount in, see if that gives me a little more room. There we go. I think I got it back on there. So now I got to pull the clip back down on. There we go. Now I can put the front mount back in. Make sure the 2 bolts go in the hole. So I have the engine jacked up too high now, so that makes it go back farther because of the there. Now I can put the bolt in. Where'd the bolt go? Forgot there's a nut that goes on the back of that. Don't know where it went. Oh yeah, it's down there. So when you undo that, there's a nut with a retaining bracket on it. So that needs to go back on there. It's kind of in a hard spot. I think I got it on there. So I guess you just hold it in there and try and get the bolt positioned into the center of the nut and then get it started. Would have been a lot nicer if it had a welded in nut back there. But I didn't design it, so I guess I can't complain. So once you get this bolt in, then you can do up the 2 lower nuts. Again, that's a 14mm deep socket with a long extension. Now that I got the mount done up, I can put the power steering reservoir back in position. Wait, I'll put that in after I put this bracket back on so I have the ground cable. So these are all 14mm bolts and one 14mm nut. Don't forget to put the ground strap back on. Now the alternator goes back in. Before you tighten it up, put the pulley back on, the belt back on. This tightens up with a 12mm. Wants to have some slack, but not a whole lot. If it squeals, you can easily just get back in here and tighten it up a little more. And the back's the 14mm. Now you can put the harness back on. Then the throttle cable comes back over. And a long extension with the 10mm socket to get the bolts back in. make sure you do the 3 plugs up, one down here, and then the other 2 up here. Might not run so well without these. Then you can put the cover back on. Should be good to give it a test start after I put the battery terminal back on. Now I gotta reset my radio station. So on this car, it's got a distributor cap, so it has a timing adjustment on it. Let me get over here where I can see that better. So before I started this project, I made a mark on it to show where it was. So that's that black mark at the top up here. And right now, the way I had it, I had to have the timing adjusted way down there. So I'll see if it starts and see if we need to adjust the timing from there. Don't forget to put the breather hose back on, the valve cover. So if you're like me and you forgot to disconnect the alternator or the battery before you disconnected the alternator, you probably blew this main alternator fuse, the 80 amp fuse right there. So I'll probably have to go to the store and buy another one of those, which they're probably not open today since it's the day after Thanksgiving, but they might be. We'll give it a try. Okay, I got the fuse replaced, so I'll give it a try starting it again. So I got my timing light, and I'll hook this up to see what the timing says. Maybe I can adjust it a little better if possible. So it goes on the battery and on the #1 spark plug. You can kind of see the mark on the pulley and the timing adjustment area. So let me adjust that a little bit. Now it looks like it's up a little higher. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but it's up above 5 degrees. So let me see how that works out on the power end of things. So I'll turn the car off, put the tire back on and let it down. And
looks like that's all I got on the video. The car ran great and had good power.